Ancient Greek mind, Plato. Plato is one of the leading philosophers of Greek extraction. He was tutored by Socrates. The rivalry between his Athens and Sparta, the influence of Spartan victory over Athens, and the love he had for his master Socrates to a large extent motivated him to write the book The Republic. For the sake of stability, he recommended in the Republic that humans in society should be divided into three forms: workers, soldiers, and philosophers, and that the philosophers, by virtue of their elongated education, should be kings. The soldiers should concentrate on the defense of the state, while the workers should concentrate on production to keep the state alive. Plato also allowed the workers to own property, but prohibited the two other classes, that is, philosophers and soldiers, from owning private property due to its corruptive influence. He prescribed communism of wives and property for the philosopher and soldierly classes. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to define and use correctly some of the keywords printed in bold. Also, explain the selection of two kings in Sparta. And lastly, describe Greek city-states. Socrates, the cornerstone. Socrates, the most famous of all Greek philosophers, groomed Plato. The fame of Socrates endures, probably not because of his acclaimed wisdom and achievements in philosophy, but because of the influence of his pupil, Plato. Sabine and Thorson, 1973. Socrates was an ugly-looking man who walked the streets of Athens barefooted and remained scantily and shabbily clad, even in the coldest of winters. Nevertheless, he was exceedingly popular throughout Greece for his wisdom. The unprecedented courage and equanimity with which he faced his trial and death when he drank the poisonous hemlock in 399 BC elevated him to almost the status of a saint. We are particularly indebted to him for his dialectics. With that being said, Plato in all his writings, the Apology, the Phaedo, and the Republic, etc., gives great credit and attention to Socrates by making him his mouthpiece and attributing to him even his own ideas. In this way, Plato immortalized the name of Socrates. For Socrates himself, just like Jesus, wrote practically nothing, and elevated him to a status in philosophy that can hardly be excelled. The Greek city-states. Like Socrates, both Plato and Aristotle were Athenian Greeks of the 5th and 4th centuries BC. Greece, a major peninsula east of the Adriatic Sea, consists of the mainland and a series of islands scattered all over the Aegean Sea, adjoining the Mediterranean Sea. See Bois FK 1969 and World Book Encyclopedia 1993. A look at any map reveals the rugged features of its landscape. The communication problems posed by the series of mountains and slopes, most of them of limestone origin, forced the ancient Greeks to organize themselves politically around the main cities into a series of separate independent communities called city-states or polis. But in times of dire need, such as war, these city-states could form military alliances or leagues, the most important being the Delian League, led by Athens, and the Peloponnesian League, headed by Sparta. Athens and Sparta were also the most prominent of the Greek city-states. According to F.K. Bois, 1969, and Sabian and Thorson, 1973, Athens attained a golden age under Pericles. At the time of Plato, its population was about 10,000. Sparta only had 5,000. A high proportion, up to one-third, of this population was composed of slaves, all of which in the case of Athens were politically disenfranchised together with the aliens, women and children. Political participation was the prerogative of only adult males. Both Athens and Sparta were also the most prosperous Greek commercial centers, but great rivals. Sparta was noted, and probably also envied, for its unparalleled military organization, discipline and efficiency, while Athens was known for its pride as the center of Greek culture and civilization. Politically, it was a democracy, culturally, a great intellectual center, and socially, it was the fairest and most cultivated in arts and sports. That it boasted of great intellectuals such as Socrates, Plato, and others, therefore is not a surprise. Every Greek city-state envied Athens for its prosperity. The influence of Sparta. In spite of its democratic and intellectual appeal, however, it is not Athens but Sparta that is of special relevance to us. Not only did Sparta command the admiration of the rest of Greece, but actually influenced most of the views of our philosophers on politics and the organization of social life. Compare Plato's idea in the Republic with this position from the World Book Encyclopedia, 1993. Sparta was famous for its military power and its loyal soldiers. The greatest honor that could come to a Spartan was to die in defense of the country, meaning that the sole business of a Spartan citizen was war, to which he was trained from birth. At the age of 20, all the boys were trained in one big school. The purpose of the training was to make them hardy, indifferent to pain, and submissive to discipline. There was no nonsense about cultural or scientific education. The sole aim was to produce good soldiers, wholly devoted to the state. It was this austere military discipline that transformed Sparta into a military oligarchy. Marriage was permissible, but since the actual military training started at 20, an early marriage had to be managed as if it was an illicit and secret affair, until the man attains the legal age of 30, at which he attained a citizenship status and could cohabit with a woman. Spartan women were not secluded like respectable women elsewhere in Greece. Spartan women were not secluded like respectable women. Elsewhere in Greece, girls went through the same physical training as was given to boys. They did their gymnastics together, all being naked. The purpose was to harden their bodies with exercises of running, wrestling, throwing the bar, and casting the darts. See World Book Encyclopedia, 1993. Such exercise was also to ease the pain of childbirth. Even though they played naked, no immoral sentiment or behavior was to be exhibited, let alone tolerated. What is more, no sign of sentimentality was to be shown by a mother when her newborn child was condemned to death or her sons killed in a battle. Politically, the Spartan state had two kings, chosen from two aristocratic families by hereditary succession. A council of 30 elders, which included the two kings, 5 ephors, and an assembly composed of all the citizens. The assembly elected the 28 elders, whose age must be over 60 to form the council, and by lots chose the 5 ephors. The 5 ephors had the responsibility of checking the behavior of the kings, and so even had to accompany the king during any military expedition in order to monitor his behavior. Every month, the king swore to uphold the constitution, and the epochs then swore to uphold the kings, so long as they remained true to their oath. The council acted as a judicial, legislative, and policy-making body. It had power to try criminal cases and to prepare matters to be presented before the assembly, which could ratify or reject such proposal. No law could be enacted without the consent of the assembly. The job of the kings was mainly to command the army in time of war. It was a general policy that no Spartan citizen should be destitute and none should be rich. Each had a plot of land which he was to draw his sustenance. This lot could not be sold or alienated except as free gift. None was allowed to own gold or silver, that is, Spartan simplicity, and it became proverbial. But probably because the efforts were chosen from among the poorest in the society, they were prone to bribery and corruption. The above was, of course, the Sparta that claimed the admiration of most Greeks, including Plato. Thus, most of the principles enumerated here form part of his utopia. The book, The Republic, is a reflection of the truth of Spartan's influence on the rest of Greece and Plato's political thoughts in particular. Plato's Republic. Social background. Plato, the author of the Republic, that is Utopia, was the son of Ariston by Peristion. Both were of aristocratic families in Athens. Ariston was the son of the late king Pericles of Athens, 460 to 429 BC. The mother of Plato, Peristion, was the daughter of Solon, who was elected archon, that is ruler, in 594 BC, and had the credit of carrying out most of the reforms that brought democracy into Athens. This aristocratic background is quite important in our understanding of Plato's preference for oligarchy in the Republic. He was born in 427 BC in the midst of the Peloponnesian Wars of 431 to 404 BC. See the World Book Encyclopedia 1993. Plato had the luck of witnessing the struggle between Athens and Sparta for political ascendancy in Greece. To Plato, it was not just an ordinary military struggle, but a political one, a struggle between democracy and oligarchy. Thus, when Athens was crushed by Sparta in 404 BC, it also meant the victory of oligarchy over democracy. No doubt, this favorably disposed him towards oligarchy later. For Plato, the merit of aristocracy and militarism was shown by the long period of over a century of political stability Sparta had enjoyed, vis-a-vis the several leadership crises democratic Athens had suffered. There was therefore very little merit in democracy. A third very crucial influence on Plato was his tutelage under Socrates. Plato was not only the pupil of Socrates, but also his admirer. In fact, he was to stand surety to Socrates, were the jury to accept the latter's option of a fine. But the amount proposed by Socrates himself was so small as to be tantamount to a slight contempt. Consequently, the jury condemned him to death. When Socrates was executed, Plato, no doubt, saw it as part of the mischief of democracy, because Socrates was innocent of the charges of corrupting the youth brought against him. From Socrates, he probably learned his preoccupation with ethical problems and his tendency to seek theological rather than mechanical explanations of the world. The good dominated his thoughts. more than anything else, and it is difficult not to attribute this fact to the influence of Socrates. See Havelock, 1963. Three other philosophers also influenced Plato's views. One was Pythagoras, from whom Plato derived his respect for mathematics, his belief in immortality, his love of mysticism, and most of the religious principles he enunciated, including most of the ideas in the simile of the cave or allegory of the cave. From Parmenides, derived the belief that reality is eternal and timeless, and that on logical grounds, all change must be illusory. From Heraclitus, Plato imbibed the doctrine that there is nothing permanent in the sensible world except change. It is this philosophical and social background that informed the authoritarianism we find in Plato's politics. According to Plato, goodness and reality are timeless. The best state is the one which most nearly copies the heavenly model, by having a minimum of change and a maximum of static perfection, and its rulers should be those who best understands the eternal good. See Allen B. 1968 and Havelock, 1963. To be a good statesman, one must know the good, and this he can only do by a combination of intellectual and moral discipline. If those who have not gone through this discipline are allowed a share in government, they will inevitably corrupt it. The Pythagorean emphasis on mathematics manifested strongly when Plato was assigned the responsibility of teaching young Daltius, the tyrant of Syracuse. Plato tried to transform him into philosopher king, but failed mainly because of his insistence on the young king to learn geometry. He was sufficiently Pythagorean to think that without mathematics, no true wisdom is possible. This view implies an oligarchy. Authoritarianism can be deduced from Plato's view when he posited that leisure is essential to wisdom, and only those who have independent means or who are relieved by the state from anxieties as to their substance can afford such leisure. This point of view is essentially aristocratic. Plato was not only a philosopher, but an imaginative writer of great genius and charm. Apart from his Republic, that is the Utopia, he also wrote the Apology, which is supposedly the speech of Socrates at his trial. The Phaedo, in which Socrates discussed immortality and many others. The Charmides, for instance, attempts a definition of temperance and moderation. The Lysis of friendship and the Laches of courage. In all this, the primary character remains Socrates. In this way, before his death in 347 BC, Plato left a good memorial for his beloved master. Now, let us turn to our Plato's Utopia, the Republic. Summary. In this session, we have discussed and learned about Plato and the Greek city-states. We also learned about Socrates, Pythagoras, and Heraclitus, and how these great people influenced the philosophical ideas and thoughts of Plato. We equally learned the social background of Plato. From here we picked that he was from an aristocratic background, which also informed his preference for oligarchy to democracy on the form of government. End of study session 2. Thank you for listening.